Ever wondered where witches get their power? Some say malevolent witches are actually fairies, or people who derive their knowledge and power from the fairies. Others believe that they are in league with demons, or that they manifest their powers from the energy of the natural world. G'day, I'm Kitty. Welcome to Fairy Encounters. Did you know that witch trials were held in Cornwall, England in the 16th and 17th centuries? And these resulted in executions, mostly women, of course, who were accused of witchcraft. A common accusation against them was that they would bewitch their enemies, as well as their enemies' cattle and children. But a lesser-known charge was that a witch was believed to associate with or do the bidding of fairies. I'm so glad you're with me today. I've compiled 12 highly disturbing published stories of witches in the ancient land of Cornwall. On the tract called the Gump, near Kenidjack, is a beautiful well of clear water, not far from which was a miner's cot, in which dwelt 2 miners and their sister. They always told her never to go to the well after daylight, that they would fetch the water for her. However, on one Saturday night, she had forgotten to get in a supply for the morrow, so she went off to the well. Passing by a gap in a broken-down hedge near the well, she saw an old woman sitting down, wrapped in a red shawl. She asked her what she did there at that time of night, but received no reply. She thought this rather strange, but plunged her pitcher in the well. When she drew it up, though a perfectly sound vessel, it contained no water. She tried again, and though she saw the water rushing in at the mouth of the pitcher, it was sure to be empty when lifted out. She then became rather frightened. She spoke again to the old woman, but receiving no answer, hastened away and entered the house in great alarm to her brothers. They told her that it was on account of that old woman that they did not wish her to go to the well at night. What she saw was the ghost of old Moll, a witch who had been a great terror to the people in her lifetime and had laid many fearful spells on them. They said they saw her sitting in the gap by the wall every night when going to bed. All those who have visited the fine piles of rocks in the vicinity of the so-called St. Levan, Land's End, cannot have failed to notice the arrangement of cubical masses of granite piled one upon the other, known as the chair ladder. This remarkable pile presents to the beat of the Atlantic waves a sheer face of cliff of very considerable height, standing up like a huge column, the horizontal joints representing so many steps in this so-called ladder. On the top is placed a stone of remarkable shape, which is by no great effort of the imagination converted into a chair. And there it was that Madgy Figgy, one of the most celebrated of the St. Levan and Borean witches, was in the habit of seating herself when she desired to call up to her aid the spirits of the storm. Often has she been seen swinging herself to and fro on this dizzy height when a storm has been coming home upon the shores, and richly laden vessels have been struggling with the winds. From this spot she poured forth her imprecations on man and beast, and none whom she had offended could escape those withering spells. And from this chair, which will ever bear her name, Madgy Figgy would always take her flight, often starting like some huge bird mounted on a stem of ragwort. Figgy has headed a band of inferior witches and gone off rejoicing in their iniquities to Wales. This old hag lived in a cottage not far from Rafter, and she and all her gang, which appears to have been a pretty numerous crew, were notorious wreckers. On one occasion, Madgy, from her seat of storms, lured a Portuguese vessel into Purlo Cove and drowned all the passengers. As they were washed on shore, the bodies were stripped of everything valuable and buried by Figgy and her husband in the green hollow, which may yet be seen just above Purlo Cove, marking the graves with a rough stone placed at the head of the corpse. The spoils on this occasion must have been large, for all the women were supplied for years with rich dresses, and costly jewels were seen decking the red arms of the girls who laboured in the fields. For a long time, gems and gold continued to be found on the sands. Amongst the bodies thrown ashore was one of a lady richly dressed, with chains of gold about her. Rich and rare were the gems that she wore, and not only so, but valuable treasure was fastened around her, she evidently hoping, if saved, to secure some of her property. This body, like all the others, was stripped, but Figgy said there was a mark on it which boded them evil, and she would not allow any of the gold or gems to be divided, as it would be sure to bring bad luck if it was separated. A dreadful quarrel ensued, and bloodshed was threatened, but the diabolical old Figgy was more than a match for any of the men, and the power of her impetuous will was superior to them all. Everything of value, therefore, belonging to this lady was gathered into a heap and placed in a chest in Madgy Figgy's hut. They buried the Portuguese lady on the same evening, and after dark a light was seen to rise from the grave, pass along the cliffs, and seat itself in Madgy's chair at Tolpedden. Then, after some hours, it descended, passed back again, and, entering the cottage, rested upon the chest. This curious phenomenon continued for more than 3 months, nightly, much to the alarm of all but Figgy, who said she knew all about it, and it would all be right in time. One day, a strange-looking and strangely attired man arrived at Figgy's cottage. Figgy's man, her husband, was at home alone. To him, the stranger addressed himself by signs, as he could not speak English, so he does not appear to have spoken at all, but expressed a wish to be led to the graves. Away they went, but the foreigner did not appear to require a guide. He at once selected the grave of the lady, and, sitting down upon it, he gave vent to his pent-up sorrows. He sent Figgy's man away and remained there till night, when the light arose from the grave more brilliant than ever and proceeded directly to the hut, resting as usual on the chest, which was now covered up with old sails and all kinds of fishermen's lumber. The foreigner swept these things aside and opened the chest. He selected everything belonging to the lady, refusing to take any of the other valuables. He rewarded the wreckers with costly gifts and left them, no one knowing from whence he came or whither he went. Madgy Figgy was now truly triumphant. One witch knows another witch, dead or living, she would say, and that witch would have been the death of us if we hadn't kept the treasure, whereas now we have good gifts and no gainsaying 'em. Some say they have seen the light in Madgy Figgy's chair since those times. Jenny Harris was a reputed witch. This woman, old, poor, and from the world's ill usage rendered malicious, was often charged with the evils which fell upon cattle, children, or indeed men and women. On one occasion, a robust and rough-handed washerwoman who conceived that she was under the spell of Jenny Harris laid violent hands on the aged crone, being resolved to bring blood from her. The witch's arm was scratched and gouged from the elbow to the wrist, so that a sound inch of skin did not exist. This violent assault became the subject of inquiry before the magistrates, who fined the washerwoman £5 for the assault. I was present at a magistrate's in Tywood Dreath some years ago, when an old woman from Gollant was brought up for witchcraft. One farmer who appeared against her stated that he had then 6 bullocks hanging up in chains in his orchard, and he attributed their disease and death to the poor old woman's influence as a witch. The case was dismissed. But there was a dinner at the inn after this magistrates' meeting, and some of the farmers present were disposed to ridicule the idea of witchcraft. I said, well knowing their real views and opinions, "Gentlemen, it is all well enough to laugh, but it appears to me to be a serious matter." Upon which Mr. Harris, a farmer of Torfray, said, "You are right. I can tell of 2 cases in which one family suffered severely." Then he gave us the details of the cases. All the others present had a case or 2, each one within his own experience to vouch for, and the whole afternoon was spent telling witch stories. There lived at Treva, a hamlet in Zenor, a wonderful old lady, deeply skilled in necromancy. Her charms, spells, and dark incantations made her the terror of the neighbourhood. This old lady, however, failed to impress her husband with any belief in her supernatural powers, nor did he fail to proclaim his unbelief aloud. One day this skeptic came home to dinner and found, being exceedingly hungry, to his bitter disappointment that not only was there no dinner to eat, but that there was no meat in the house. His rage was great, but all he could get from his wife was, I couldn't get meat out of the stones, could I? It was in vain to give the reins to passion, the old woman told him, and he must know that hard words buttered no parsnips. Well, at length he resolved to put his wife's powers to the proof, and he quietly but determinedly told her that he would be the death of her if she did not get him some dinner, but if in half an hour she gave him some good cooked meat, he would believe all she had boasted of her power and be submissive to her forever. St. Ives, the nearest market town, was 5 miles off, but, nothing doubting, the witch put on her bonnet and cloak and started. Her husband watched her from their cottage door as she went down the hill, and at the bottom of the hill he saw his wife quietly place herself on the ground and disappear. In her place, a fine hare ran on at its full speed. He was not a little startled, but he waited, and within the half hour in walked his wife with good flesh and taties all ready for eating. There was no longer any doubt, and the poor husband lived in fear of the witch of Treva to the day of her death. Death came to her a few years later. It is said the room in which she lay was full of evil spirits, and that the old woman's shrieks were awful to hear. Peace, in the shape of pale-faced death, came to her at last, and then a black cloud rested over the house when all the heavens were clear and blue. She was borne to the grave by 6 aged men, carried, as is the custom, underhand. When they were about halfway between the house and the church, a hare started from the roadside and leaped over the coffin. The terrified bearers let the corpse fall to the ground and ran away. Another lot of men took up the coffin and proceeded. They had not gone far when a cat was suddenly seen seated on the coffin, and again the coffin was abandoned. After long consultation and being persuaded by the parson to carry the old woman very quickly into the churchyard while he walked before, 6 others made the attempt, and as the parson never ceased to repeat the Lord's Prayer, all went on quietly. Arrived at the church stile, they rested the corpse. The parson paused to commence the ordinary burial service, and there stood the hare, which, as soon as the clergyman began, "I am the resurrection and the life," uttered a diabolical howl, changed into a black, unshapen creature, and disappeared. I can't altogether exactly believe in witches at all, said a good woman to us, but this I can tell you. Our John's wife quarrelled once with her next-door neighbour's wife, and when John came home, like a husband always should, he took up to defend his wife. Well, the woman neighbour held a knife to him to send him away, and for a long time never spoke to our John. At last, after a bit, she used to speak to him, and like as if it was all over and never had happened, and she used to speak quite sensible to him, warm and friendly, but John always was very well when he used to meet her, but as soon as ever he got near her, he was taken ill at once. When he didn't meet her, he was well enough. These illnesses got worse and worse, and each time he spent longer in his bed, no doctor being able to help him. After a time of this, John was advised to go to the pellar, and off he went to Helston, sure enough, and the pellar told him he was ill-wished, and told him it was a woman who overlooked him, and then told him who it was. Well, the pellar gave John instruction and told John that if he didn't do as he told him, he would very likely die suddenly by her hand, as the treatment of him was getting worse with each turn. Our John, dear fellow, came home and got unbelieving and didn't do as was told by the pellar. What a lot of nonsense, he said. In less than 3 months, he was a dead man. Not as I believe the woman's a witch. No, not I. But she had an evil mind. And what's so bad as an evil mind? I used to have a woman meeting me, said a fisherman, when I went a-fishing, and she used to wish me a good catch every time she saw me, and I was always sure to have no luck whenever I met her. Luck used to be good enough other times. Well, I went to the pellar and done what he told me I'd done, and the woman came and begged my pardon, and my luck was good enough after that. To what purpose the pellar came by his knowledge I could not divine, for he was miserably clad, and I learned that his family were, like himself, miserable and degraded. At the Liskeard Police Court on Monday, Harriet King appeared before the sitting magistrates, charged with an assault on Elizabeth Wellington. The complainant had called the mother of the defendant a witch and said that she had ill-wished a person, and the ill wish fell on the cat, and the cat died. This annoyed the daughter, who retaliated by bad words and blows. The magistrates expressed surprise at the cause of the assault, but that it had been proved. They fined the defendant 1 shilling and the costs, £1 in all. A farmer living in one of the western parishes was constantly losing his cattle in the spring. Many persons said this was because they were nearly starved during the winter, but he insisted upon it that he was ill-wished and that a blight was upon him. At length, to break the spell and discover the witch, he betook himself to a conjurer, the White Witch, who lived near Lizard Point. This learned person told the farmer to bleed the next animal when taken ill, and to receive the blood upon straw, being careful not to lose any of it. Then the straw and blood were to be burnt, and whilst the blood was burning, he would be certain of seeing the witch pass through the smoke. A young steer fell ill first. It was bled as ordered, the blood caught upon the straw, and both carefully burnt. While this was going on, female curiosity induced a poor, weak old woman to go into the field and see what was going on. She was well known to all, and as guiltless as a child of ill-wishing anybody, but she was seen through the smoke, darted upon by the farmer, and cruelly ill-treated for a witch. A man who has resided at several places on the south coast was known by the name of Pellar. He is said to be in possession of no end of charms, and to possess powers of no common order over this and the other world. He is able, writes a friend, to put ghosts, hobgoblins, and witches to rest. There was an old woman who had long suffered from debility, and she and her friends were satisfied that she had been ill-wished or overlooked by a witch. So she went to the pellar. He told her to buy a bullock's heart and get a packet of pound pins. She was to stick the heart as full of pins as she could, and the body that ill-wished her felt every pin run into the bullock's heart, same as if they had been run into her. The spell was taken off, and the old woman grew strong. Near Zena, there is a place which is said to have been the place where, at Midsummer, all the witches of the West met. The scenery is of the wildest description. The granite cairns are spread around in every direction, and many of those masses are so strangely fashioned by the atmospheric influences ever acting on them that fancy can readily fashion them into tombs and temples. Rock basins abound on these hills, and of ruined cromlechs there are many. Whatever the local historians may say, local traditions assure us that on Midsummer Eve, all the witches in Penwith gathered here, and that they lit fires on every cromlech and in every rock basin until the hills were alive with flame, and there they renewed their vows to the ones from whom they derived their power. Hence to this day this place is called Burn Downs. Amidst these rock masses there was one pile remarkable among all the others for its size, and, being formed of cubical masses, for its square character. This was known as the Witches' Rock, and here it was said they assembled at midnight to carry on their wicked deeds. This rock has been removed, and with it the witches have died. The last real witch in Zena having passed away, as I have been told, about 30 years since, and with her, some say, the fairies fled. I have, however, many reasons for believing that our little friends have still a few haunts in this locality. There is but one reason why we should regret the disappearance of the Witches' Rock. You see, anyone touching this rock 9 times at midnight was insured against bad luck. Nothing can be more certain than that through all time, passing on from father to son, there has been a wild reverence of this mass of rock known as the Logan Stone. And long after the days when the Druids ceased to be, there is every reason for believing that the Christian priests, if they did not encourage, did not forbid the use of this and similar rocks to be used as places of ordeal. Hence the mass of rock on which is poised the Logan Stone has ever been connected with the supernatural. To the south of the Logan Rock is a high peak of granite, towering above the other rocks. This is known as the Castle Peak. No one can say for how long a period, but most certainly for ages, This peak has been the midnight rendezvous for witches. Many a man and woman too, now sleeping quietly in the churchyard of St. Leven, would, had they the power, attest to having seen the witches flying into the castle peak on moonlight nights, mounted on the stems of the ragwort and bringing with them the things necessary to make their charms potent and strong. This place was long noted as the gathering place of the army of witches who took their departure for Wales, where they would luxuriate at the most favoured seasons of the year upon the milk of the Welshmen's cows. From this peak, many a struggling ship has been watched by a malignant crone, while she has been brewing the tempest to destroy it. And many a rejoicing chorus has been echoed in horror by the cliffs around, when the witches have been croaking their miserable delight over the perishing crews, as they have watched man, woman, and child drowning, whom they were presently to rob of the treasures they were bringing home from other lands. Upon the rocks behind the Logan Rock, it would appear that every kind of mischief which can befall man or beast was once brewed by the St. Leven witches. The link between witches and fairies is so often overlooked. If you find this subject as fascinating as I do, I'd be happy to dive deeper into the witch trials of Cornwall, or witches in general. Just let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for spending some time with me. If you can, please support my channel. YouTube is really messing with small channels right now, but I'm determined not to give up. So if you can, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment of at least 7 words. I'm told YouTube likes 7 words or more, so there you go. These are the really easy ways that you can get YouTube's attention and tell them that you like this kind of content. Many thanks, friends. Your support means everything. Until next time, stay curious. Cheerio.